Why do we like stained glass windows? One of the questions I get asked a lot when it comes to the faith and Catholic Christianity is, what's with the stained glass windows? Or another observation I hear people make is something about stained glass windows, how, friends and family like the stained glass windows in the churches that they attend or have visited or simply observed in pictures or videos. And I always, couldn't quite put together why they might come to that conclusion. And I've always been curious as to if I were to explain why they're inclined to like it, what would I say? And that's kind of my goal with this particular video, which is to try and put the pieces together of what it means and why it is that we have a natural affinity towards stained glass windows. And I think stained glass windows is kind of a, what's the word for it? It's kind of a universal truth in terms of beauty. And what I mean is when we see something that's beautiful, objectively speaking, something that we can all agree is genuinely beautiful, like a mountain range or a nice beach or somebody you might find attractive, we sort of categorize stained glass windows in that same category. It's just something everybody likes to some capacity. And when somebody dislikes those things, it says more about them than it does about the actual stained glass or the actual entity that is being observed. And so that's what I think is fascinating to me about specifically stained glass windows in churches. Now there's an argument as to what kind of stained glass looks better than others, which I do think there are degrees of beauty even within the stained glass window phenomenon that I seem to observe in friends and family. So why are they so beautiful? I think, and I'm going to answer that question directly in a little bit, but I think the reason stained glass windows appeal to the eyes and in a deeper sense appeal to something deeper within us is precisely the same reason that music appeals to us in a transcendent way. If you ever hear a really good song that you feel just moves you in a very spiritual manner, you're dealing with something transcendent, something that's really deep. Or you look at a piece of art that just captivates you and you can't quite put the pin on why that is. I think stained glass windows fall under that category. And to kind of give it maybe something that's kind of abstract, I think stained glass windows resonate with us in the same way that good ideas resonate with us. In Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech, right? What was his dream? It wasn't just the statement, I have a dream, that made his words so powerful that echoes even decades after his death. It's there's something about the context. There's something about the era upon which Martin Luther King Jr. was living and his position and all these beautiful factors that kind of came together to make the beauty of the I Have a Dream speech come to life. But as per a more recent phenomenon, I think of an idea that kind of captivated the self-help world for a while was game theory by Simon Sinek. And if you don't know, what that thing is, I would go look it up. Simon Sinek, he's an author, brilliant individual, very secular humanistic in his thought, but he has a very profound way of articulating things that really resonate with people. And once you kind of understand who he is and listen to the works that he puts out, it's hard to see the appeal of who he is and his ideas and why he's gained so much popularity. But in his idea, game theory, and kind of modernizing the concept, he would go around to different businesses and self-help conferences and preach on this idea of the 5 points of game theory, of how to win in infinite games. So I'll give a brief overview of what game theory is, and then the ideas, and you'll kind of see what I mean when I talk about the beauty of ideas, being related to stained glass and that they kind of resonate with us in a certain way. So in short, game theory is this idea that there are two types of games: finite games and infinite games. Finite games are games in which there is set conditions that are imposed on, a game that inevitably lead to the end of the game. So a finite game would be like chess or baseball or football, something where there are parties involved and the parties engage with the game until it comes to a definitive end. And then there's infinite games. Infinite games are a bit more, kind of out there in a sense. Like infinite games might be something like business or love or something that involves a bit more longevity. And so Simon would categorize, like business as an infinite game because you can't really win in business. You can't really win the game of love, so to speak. And why is that? Well, because there aren't any circumstances or conditions by which you understand business or love that would lead you to a point at which you are declared the number one person in business as the absolute winner of all time. Same thing with love. You can't be, number one, the finite winner of business, because business is always changing, and so is love, right? When you're in a relationship in which you love somebody, the same dynamic is taking place where, you can't say you won at the game of love as much as you say you kind of cultivate the virtues that allow you to better express the virtue of love. And so that's kind of what the infinite game is. It's simply a game that you are engaged with for the sake of keeping the game in play. You're not winning, you're simply advancing your position in the game for as long as you can maintain it. And so that's the difference. Finite games are games that you play to win, and then infinite games are games you play to maintain play. And so in Simon Sinek's book, or in his speeches, if you ever listen to them, he gives certain keynotes and he gives speeches on this particular idea. And what he does is he breaks down the finite game, or not the finite game, the infinite game theory concept a bit more, I guess what's the word for it, a bit more pleasing to the ear than I can. But when he breaks down the whole game theory, the infinite game theory concept, he divides it up into 5 different points. And the first point is advancing a just cause. The second point is developing a trusting team. The third point is knowing your worthy rival. The fourth is developing existential flexibility. And the fifth is having a courage to lead. And so when he presents his game theory proposition and idea, he does it with the backing of these 5 points to give people a sense of, how do I approach business? How do I approach love? How do I approach my relationships? How do I approach my education? How do I approach these things that require that I constantly develop myself such that I'm in a better position to grapple with the entity I'm grappling with, such that I am just merely better? And when you listen to him, when you listen to his ideas, you can't help but feel drawn to that idea and what it has to offer. And that's what I'm trying to get at with the stained glass thing, and that's why I think they're related. And I'll give you a good example here. In the book Catholicism by Bishop Robert Barron, he gives a quick exposition on Thomas Aquinas's explanation for why we think beauty is beautiful. And he breaks it down into 3 ways, and I'm actually going to read the book so that way you can kind of get a gist of what I'm getting at here. Thomas Aquinas said that beauty occurs at the intersection of 3 elements: wholeness, harmony, and radiance. We say something is beautiful, like a face, a painting, a golf swing, when it hangs together as one. It is whole. When all of its parts work together in consonance, it has harmony. And when it shines forth as an archetype of what such a thing should be, it has radiance. And I think that if we understand a beautiful idea in the same way we understand a stained glass window, we can actually see those same attributes applying to both ideas and stained glass. Why is beauty beautiful? Well, because beauty is whole, it's complete. There's nothing more about whatever is being observed or taken in that needs to change. When you look at a good piece of art, when you see someone you are really attracted to, your spouse or your partner, you don't want anything about that to change, but you always know that that thing could be better somehow. But for now, you just sort of leave the thing, person, or entity or concept as it is, and you can, kind of play with it, a little bit later and sort of see how you might engage with the already whole and complete entity that you're grappling with, so to speak. The second thing, the consonants. Why is beauty, beautiful? It's because it works. There's something about an idea or a stained glass window that just works. It's right where it needs to be, right? The whole concept of game theory and why it blew up in the self-help world is because it worked. It was functional. It was practical. It was necessary. People loved it because they felt and knew and could apply the ideas in such a way that made them better businessmen or women, and made them better at, loving their partners and their spouses. And then finally, why do we find beauty beautiful? Well, because it's radiant. It's what it should be. It has a purpose. It has something that it's working towards that transcends the entity itself, right? With a partner or boyfriend, girlfriend, or wife, or with business, right? The end of our boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife or business isn't them themselves, but that they're contributing to something greater than themselves, whether it be, a family, whether it be, to advance a mission in terms of business. It's got something that puts it in its proper place in relation to the rest of the world. And so that's what stained glass is. It's got something about it that transcends its practical purpose here on Earth. And I think the best way to word the stained glass phenomenon is that it's what it should be, right? The church is supposed to be a taste of heaven. In the Catholic Church, we have what's called the Mass, and the Mass is supposed to be precisely that, a taste of heaven. When heaven and earth come together as one in the book of Revelations, right? It's going to be beauty at its highest, and that's what stained glass is supposed to do. It's supposed to sort of give us a taste of, the visual reality, the visual beauty of what the world is going to be when we, come into the fullness of what mankind is capable of at the second coming. Beauty, when I maybe speak of it in a more abstract way, maybe in a more metaphysical way, it's kind of the expression of goodness and truth when properly done. And what do I mean by that? Well, I'll give two examples. When we practice virtue, right? When we are sincere in our virtue, right? We're essentially the best version of ourselves, right? How does self-help and virtue differ? That's a whole conversation in itself, but self-help is, looking at oneself to see how you can better your own position for your own sake. But virtue is the outward expression of the state of the soul. And so when you are, practicing virtue, you're practicing something that is good and something that is true, right? Virtue is good in precisely the fact that it betters everyone involved in some capacity. Even if it involves suffering, it's virtue in that it's leading to something better than what already exists. Now, as per truth, it's true in that virtue is real. It's something we can observe with the senses. And so when you practice virtue, you are practicing beauty because you're sort of mathematically putting together two of the three transcendentals, truth, goodness, and beauty, and expressing that in a very proper way. Another example of, beauty being the combination of truth and goodness is when we see children playing outside. When you observe children playing outside, it's truly a beautiful sight. The laughter, the purity, the genuineness, just letting authentic, baby adults go out into the world and just play. There's something beautiful about it. There's something that's what does Thomas Aquinas say? It's whole. There's something about children playing that's complete. There's nothing more that needs to be done. It works in that, kids have a very beautiful way and, creating games and using their mind to kind of put together scenarios and daydreams and their imagination in a manner that they create a functional world of play that helps them learn about the world. Which brings me to that next point, which is radiance, which is that play is, when kids are playing, they're sort of aiming towards something, which is how to be a functional person in society. And so, I think that's in some sense what we see in the stained glass window phenomenon, where we're not just, what's the word for it? We're not just observing an aesthetic. We're engaging with something transcendent. And the purpose of the stained glass windows is precisely that it's supposed to be a taste of heaven come down to earth. Which is why, in my opinion, I don't particularly like abstract stained glass windows. Like, there is a place for them. But like, when you look at beautiful stained glass, like the Notre Dame Cathedral on the North Rose window, or I think it's like the Sainte-Chapelle Cathedral, I think, in France, and all these other beautiful churches just spread throughout the world, like my own cathedral here in Seattle, St. James Cathedral, or the Blessed Sacrament Church that's also here in Seattle. I absolutely love when I get to visit those churches. One of them I haven't visited yet, but if I get the chance to visit them, there's going to be something there that gets me to, want to transcend my life here. And that's what the stained glass window is. And so I suppose where I want to leave this off is, when you look at stained glass windows and you find yourself captivated, when you find yourself drawn, when you find yourself sort of being called to something that is divine, something spiritual, what you're feeling, and the same way you might feel it with music, or the same way you might feel it with an idea that you find that resonates, you're feeling something call you because, well, the world is inherently spiritual. There's something that, a force, we could call it, God, maybe, but they're trying to call you to himself. They're trying to call you to something through the vassal of beauty, right? Or if it's, through, virtue that you observe in others, right? That's God calling you towards goodness. Or when you observe something that you find absolutely true, just utter truth, it's because that's God calling you towards him through the vassal of truth. And that's what the beauty of the stained glass window does. It's God is calling you to himself through the lure of sincere, whole, consonant, and radiant beauty. And so, to kind of bridge the gap between that and my conclusion here, we like stained glass because deep down, secretly, it's because that stained glass is representing what is going to be in the second coming of Christ. When heaven and earth, in the book of Revelation, right, the whole beauty of Revelation is that when it culminates, it's the culmination of heaven and earth coming together as one, where we get to kind of return to the paradise before the fall in Genesis, right? You will get to experience beauty at its highest because we won't have the burden of original sin that stains us. I will say, though, there's a lot to grapple with when contending with Christianity. That is definitely something that, when I sort of am going to call you to join the Christian faith here, the Catholic Christian faith, is that, there's a lot of grappling to do. But if you want more of that stained glass, that kind of phenomenon of, grappling with the transcendent, grappling with the divine, you're going to need to submit yourself to the spiritual reality that manifested this stained glass into existence. You have to kind of, meet the conditions of, what that spiritual force wants you to become for you to see what that fullness, that fuller, more true, more beautiful heaven is going to look like when heaven and earth come together as one. And so, the way to do that is by following Christ and joining his church, the Catholic Church. This is where I would say, perhaps this is your call to walk the narrow path, to partake in the spiritual life. Perhaps it's time for you to start thinking about how you can develop virtue and cultivate wisdom. But I think first and foremost, though, when it comes to, being drawn to the beauty of the Catholic Church or the Eastern Orthodox churches, there is a leap of faith that you have to take. Right? And that's why, Christians across the world would all agree that, faith has to come first. You're not going to always get the absolute answers when it comes to Christianity and being able to engage with its beauty in a very authentic way, and in a way that perhaps the religious of the world fail to communicate to you, right? The beauty of Catholic Christianity is that, there's something about it that's trying to bridge the gap between the divine and the temporal or the world. And it's hard to explain this because, for you as a non-believer, if you are a non-believer, you almost have to take a leap of faith for you to be able to see it from the inside out. And I guess my best analogy for what the Catholic Christian faith is truly like, is it's like looking at a stained glass window from the outside and looking at it from the inside. When you look at it from the outside, it doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. But when you go inside and you sort of see the sun shine through the beautiful stained glass, then its beauty comes to life. It becomes consonant, it becomes radiant, it becomes whole. And that's what Catholic Christianity is. It's not understood truly unless you are inside. And so I would invite you to come inside, come into the cathedral of Catholic Christianity. Because perhaps, who knows, one day you'll fall in love with it. And one day you'll see the fullness, the full manifestation of that when Christ comes again and judges the living and the dead. So please, take that leap of faith with me, with all of us, all the saints and the angels that fight on the spiritual side of good, that you may have a chance to see Christ fully and truly. With that being said, till my next video, God bless, and get out there and make better happen daily.